So we're just going to give a few minutes for people to join, and people are already watching on Facebook. So hello, Facebook. Greetings. This is Shawnee Benton Gibson. Just giving folks an opportunity to arrive. We just transitioned from one workshop with Kinyofu and Mwingu on mindfulness, and now we're preparing for a session on leaning into loss, which I also believe we need to be mindful about and present to, so that we are doing it in a way that is edifying and healing and grounding for us. So I look forward to unpacking the conversation with all of you, and happy Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth.
Take you to.
And I'm not sure, Nzinga, if you're looking on Facebook, I know we're in the Zoom space, but you know, if there's an X amount of folks that have gathered on Facebook, then I'll start. I know not everybody will land in the Zoom space, but it's all good. Whatever space they're in, it's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I'll give people a couple more minutes, well, a couple more moments, maybe a minute or two, just to trickle in. And then I will introduce you and we can get started.
All righty. Loving it. And love the partnership.
All right. Welcome, welcome everyone.
So if you are on Facebook right now, my request is that you share the event, the Juneteenth Family Day event. This is an awesome event put together by Moja Events and by Athenia Rodney and her awesome team. And so just encouraging you to invite more people here on this Saturday morning to unpack this conversation, and then even beyond me. What we just experienced was Mindfulness by Kinyofu and Mwingu. Just an awesome conduit for healing for all ages and stages of our beingness. And then after this, I know we're going to have some juiciness. So Nzinga, tell us what's coming up after me, because I know all of it is connected.
All right. So coming up after you, we have presentations by Robin St. Clair, who's going to be, she's a cycle breaker. She's going to be talking about how we are the light that we seek. We'll have another presentation by Chantel Gamble about securing the bag. And we all know that that is something important at this time. So learning how to secure the bag, secure those funds. Later on, we will have a presentation on guerrilla gardening by Brother Kobla Moat. And that is, you know, gardening by any means necessary. He's going to be talking about food and security and what it's like, what we can create when we actually grow our own food. And before that, we will have a presentation by Master Chef. Give me one moment.
Oh, Keisha O'Galdes, yeah.
Yeah, Keisha O'Galdes, yep.
Yeah.
So we got
all of the people in the lineup are extended family members, part of my network. So anything that you're experiencing today, whether you're hearing from me or Robin or Kobla or Keisha or Chantel or Kinyofu, who just came before, is part of this vast community. And that's what this event is about, manifesting community and us all co-creating spaces for us to be vibrating at our highest level, manifesting at our highest level, healing at our highest level. And this session is about leaning into loss so that we aren't deflecting, denying, just pushing off or resisting the inevitable, which is loss in our lives. And I'm not just talking about death. So I know that Nzinga, you wanted to do some introducing. I'm not going to rob you of that. I just wanted to make sure that the community knew that whether you're here with me or here with another facilitator, it's all love and it's all about growth and development. And so I'm not attached to who's here and who's not. What I am committed to is the healing of our people. So Nzinga, if you would, you can do your intro from me and then I'm diving in.
All right. Well, you have already heard from Ms. Powerful Shawnee Benton Gibson. She calls herself the powerhouse in the house, always speaking from her root. Shawnee's a master teacher, a spiritual leader, trainer, healer, vision coach, performance artist, inspirational speaker, officiant, mother, and friend. Her principal teaching and healing tools consist of counseling, vision coaching, writing, rituals, psychodrama, sociometry, energy work, the performing arts, and storytelling as mediums to ignite, transform, and initiate catharsis. So that's a little bit of what we're going to be getting into today as we are leaning into loss. Yeah, and death and loss are rites of passages. They're part of the human experience and can guide us and teach us. And yeah, we're going to get started with Coach Shawnee.
So greetings, family on Facebook. Greetings, those who are gathered in the Zoom space. I am honored to be here on this auspicious day, the day after Juneteenth, which means the energy and the vibration of Juneteenth is still with us and upon us. Last night, I had the awesome opportunity to perform. I'm a performance artist. That's a huge part of my life. It's a huge part of my healing. How I approach performance art is through the mindset that art is for healing. So it's edutainment for me beyond entertainment, and it can be entertaining as well as healing. And so I'm committed to that. So who knows, as part of this session, I may do something artistic just to align us and ground us in the conversation about loss as a conduit to life, death as an opportunity and a possibility for us to move to the next phase and stage of our living. And so before I do anything else, I want to honor the ancestors. I want to honor all of the clans, all of the DNA, all of the souls, all of the vibratory energies that are in this space, whether it's the space of Facebook, connecting from across the miles. You might be in another state, you may even be in another country. I want to honor all of the ancestors that are present in the Zoom space right now, for the folks that have decided to land here and unpack the conversation, directly, because Zoom provides a space for chat and also direct coaching for me. And Nzinga, I hope you will be able to support me with any questions or comments from the Facebook space so that I can hear from everybody, whether you are here in Facebook or here in Zoom. So, pouring of libation. First and foremost, if tears come up in this space because we're talking about loss, I consider them to be a pouring of libation from your physical frame and your form. Do not stop them, please. Just mop them. Wipe your eyes, but let them flow. Because we're talking about sometimes an activating conversation about death and loss. And sometimes people haven't processed their loss or they're fresh off of a loss. And I know people in our extended community here have lost people due to the COVID-19 epidemic, have lost people as a result of the epidemic of police brutality. And even though they may not be direct relations to you, we're all related in heart, mind, and spirit. And so I invite you to pour libation in the form of tears in this space if that comes up for you and out for you. And for all of us who have experienced loss of some kind, loss of loved ones, I'm going to invite you to just sink in, take a breath, and tune in and quiet yourself while we pour libation for those who have gone before us. So I have water, the element of water present, and here is a sister face. Yes. That represents all our cousins, our mamas, our aunties. And this cup says, expect, embrace, and enjoy. Who knew? Like, you could actually have a space of enjoyment talking about loss, talking about the ancestors. Because sometimes people think, ancestral talk is low vibrational talk, or it's going to be hurtful or harmful, or remind us of things we don't want to think about and experience. But actually, it's an opportunity and a possibility for us to engage in life based on what they provided for us. So I have a plant and earth in this plant so that we can pour our libation into the earth, which is our friend. We all came from it. We will all return to it. So in the chat, if you are in the Zoom space, please put the names of your ancestors in that space. If you're on Facebook, please on the thread, add the names of your ancestors. What I will name in this space, my most immediate ancestors, is one of my bonus mothers, Mignon Harper, passed away a couple of days ago, and she was in her 90s, so I speak her name. I also will speak the name of my grandmother who passed away in February. She was my mother. She raised me, My mom was a young mom. My grandmother stepped in, and my grandfather. Both have passed, so I call on Joyce Benton and James Benton right now. And then also I call in the name of my eldest daughter, Shamani, who passed at 30 years old as a result of maternal mortality, and that scourge on our community as Black and brown folks. So I call in the name of Shamani Makiba Gibson, who passed away in October of 2019. We speak your name. So I'm going to ask you to do the same. So great ancestors, those who have loved on us when we did not love on ourselves, we pour libation in your name, Ashe. We call on your names because your names have light and love, Ashe. We say thank you for all of the sacrifices that you have provided for us, Ashe. We say thank you for allowing us to be lifted even in our times of deep sorrow and our times of lowness, Ashe. We ask that you clarify. We ask that you energize, Ashe. We call in the name of Malcolm, the activator, the speaker, the teacher. We call in the name of Martin, who was an advocate, an activist, and a mover and shaker in life. We call in the name of Octavia Butler, who was a writer and prolific writer about the energies and the spirits of Black folks as superheroes, as guides, as intuits. We call on the name of Harriet Tubman, who was the great liberator. And we also acknowledge her for her spiritual gifts, because God spoke to her and through her so she could go back and back and back and back and save our people, our enslaved people. We call on the names of those who are not known. We do not know them specifically, but we know that they lived. They're African names that were not called. They're indigenous names that were lost when they were enslaved, when they were kidnapped, when they were subjugated, when they were imprisoned against their wills. We call on the names that were dropped overboard and eaten by sharks, and who were thought of as inhumane and thought of as animalistic and not honored for their humanity and all that they brought to the world. We speak their names even though we don't know them. We know them energetically, even though we don't know them cognitively. We are grateful, Ashe, for all that you have done, Ashe. We speak your name, Ashe. We say deepest gratitude for all that you continue to do to make sure that we are clear. For some in this space, your ancestors brought you here. You don't know what you're coming to. You don't know what you're experiencing, Ashe, but you are here because it's such a time as this for you to grow and transform. We thank you. We honor you. We speak your names. We speak your names. We speak your names. Ashe, Ashe, and Amen. So here we are. Here we are in this space of leaning into loss. And I'm going to lean in and say that if you are here and you are alive, you are capable of working the muscle of leaning in and embracing and accepting loss. Loss happens every single day. We lose minutes, we lose hours, we lose days, we lose weeks and months and years. Every time passes, it's a level and an element of loss. So you have the muscle to lean in. I trust and believe. So just stay with me for the minutes that we have and trust your own higher self to seek and find what you are looking for so that you might heal and transform. So we're going to start with an exercise called face rites. And face rites is a ritual that allows you to be seen, felt, and heard in this space. We invite you all to participate with the face rites activity, whether you're on Facebook Live, or whether you are in the Zoom space. And for those who are here in the Zoom space with me, I humbly ask, it's an invitation, not a demand or a command, to show yourselves so that we can all be together in our laws, looking in each other's faces and holding space for one another. So I'll call the name of Daryl, if you would, of DJ So Lovely. I'm not sure if you're able, because you might be DJing So Lovely for the community. Coach Cheryl and Keisha and Olivia, if you are able to show your faces, I invite you to do that now so that we can all be together and co-create in this space. And Nzinga, if you would call the names of those who are actively engaged or posting on Facebook so that we might know them, if you can unmute and do that. Olivia left, or she got kicked off. I don't know if I ran her out of here by asking for her to show her face, but Olivia, if you got kicked off, come on back.
Yes, right now on Facebook, we have Evelyn Velasquez.
Yes.
We have Shaquana Pugh.
Okay.
And we have Jamie and M. Lloyd. And they are actively posting and present with us.
Beautiful. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And for those who are watching and not engaging, we invite you to continue to stay and watch and engage. So face rites. It allows us to be seen and heard in the space. So Nzinga, if you could help me out with the chat, because I want to stay focused on the people and not have to read or do anything extra other than what Spirit has given me for the session. So please do share your name, your full name. What's in a name is everything. So your name has energy and vibration. So we ask that you do that. Some of us are not aligned with our names, and therefore we experience loss because we don't get an opportunity to be our powerful selves. And even though you might not feel the loss of not speaking your own name and honoring your own name, I invite you to consider that we lose because we don't call on our names. We have resistance to them. Please do add your age. Your age is powerful. Every minute on this planet is a gift. Because we're talking about age, we recognize that not everybody made it to 20. Some babies, they come out of the womb and they're born still. They don't even have a day on the planet. So whatever age and stage we're in, it's a celebration and a gift. Now I want to ask you to put in the chat or to put on the Facebook post, what person or persons modeled loss for you, and what did they model? What person or persons, what clan, if that is alignment, modeled loss for you, and what did they model? And I'm going to take a moment to acknowledge something right now, because I am so connected to what Spirit and the ancestors can provide that I'm getting a message right now. My daughter, who passed away, that I just mentioned, Shamani, she was born on 12/19, and right now we're in 12/19 in the hour. And so I want to acknowledge her for being present as a covering for me, as an ancestor that looks out for me. So she's just giving me a nod and an okay to move forward, and just nodding and okaying that she is present because I just called her name. So thank you, Shamani, for being in this space. Models for grieving. Who modeled how to grieve in your life? And please do be aligned with what that model was. So whether you're on Facebook or whether you're in the Zoom space, please do type in who modeled loss and manifesting different aspects of loss in your life. So for me, my grandmother who raised me, I mentioned her earlier as one of the ancestors now, she modeled processing loss by not processing loss. She lost 2 children in her lifetime. 2 children. She lost a very young child. I think my uncle died maybe when he was like 2 years old, and his name was Christopher. And she also lost an adult daughter who died in her early 30s. When my grandmother lost her daughter in her early 30s, my Aunt Thomasina, whose name I didn't call on, Thomasina Benton, when she lost her, Benton Nichols, when she lost her from the virus. My aunt would use substances. She mainlined heroin, and she contracted the virus from using dirty needles. And how I discovered how my aunt died, how she transitioned, was I was working a summer job at the Department of Health. And this is just how Spirit works. And I was working in a unit that dealt with converting the names of people who had HIV or AIDS to anonymous or confidential numbers. They didn't want the names to be known, so they were converting. And I got an opportunity as a student. I think I was like 15 years old, working at the Department of Health in New York at 125 Worth Street, converting those names to numbers. Now, my aunt's name was Thomasina Benton, unusual name. So I was working on the A's, and then when I got to the B's, lo and behold, her name came up as someone that had the virus. However, my grandmother, when my aunt was really, really sick, living in her household, my grandmother never mentioned that my Aunt Thomasina had the virus. And this was in the 80s. So I do understand like the fear around it, the stigma, the shame. But my grandmother never mentioned it. We're all moving around in the house. We're watching her slowly deteriorate. She called it a heart condition. She called it everything but what it was. Now, the complications associated with HIV and AIDS are the things that, back then killed you. But it was important for us to know, that piece of information. And even though time passed, she never said the words herself. I discovered through working at that job and pulling up a card with my aunt's name on it that she had the virus, and that's why she died. And so my grandparents, my grandmother and grandfather raised me. My grandmother in particular was the model for a lot of things. She did not deal. And so therefore she did not heal. And so we grew up in a household where we didn't really have the muscle of talking about negotiating loss of any kind, not just death, which is the most obvious one, but other types of loss. When her and my grandfather broke up, really my grandfather left her for another woman. My grandmother went through a deep, deep depression, but she didn't verbalize how sad she felt, how depressed she felt. She just talked about what he did and did not do. She didn't name the things. So we were like kind of tiptoeing around what she was dealing with. Even though we knew what was happening, it was like the elephant in the room. It was never verbalized that she felt deeply saddened, that she felt a deep level of betrayal. She didn't call it that. She just acted out and talked about him and talked about how dirty he did her, and really focused on that and wanted us to rally around her and be her ally in it. But she never talked about the impact that his releasing the family and the relationship caused her, nor did she talk about the loss of connection, affinity, and love and intimacy in the relationship with my grandfather, which I feel died way, way before he left. So in Zynga, I know that there was some posts or a post in the chat space. So can you just read what was written? Or whatever's on Facebook.
Yep, so we have people posting the live streaming link. We have from Shaquana Pugh, she posts that she's 34, and we are waiting for people to just populate the full face rights, which is your full name, your age, and who modeled processing loss and grieving for you.
Right.
The Zoom space,
Yeah.
we have Coach Cheryl who posted, and she shared that she is Cheryl Lynn Glenn, age 55, and her mother modeled loss, stepdad, grandmother, aunt, uncle, and extended family modeled loss for her when her uncle Stevie was murdered when she was 10.
And what did they model, Coach Cheryl? I know that you're multitasking. What did they do or not do that created how you lost, or maybe you went in the opposite direction? Please do share like what you learned from them. And I think she's trying to unmute. Not sure, she might be frozen, but I want to welcome Kim to the space. Thank you for showing up and showing yourself. Thank you for your beautiful smile too, Kim. I appreciate you. We're talking about loss today, and we did a face rights exercise, which allows everyone to be seen and heard in the space, whether you're on Facebook or in Zoom with us, and you're in Zoom with us, and I'm grateful. So I was asking name and age, and I also asked who modeled how to process loss and death for you as far as your family and your clan. Where did you get your models from? And it could have been modeling nothing, like you didn't know what was going on, or they showed you everything and either it worked or it didn't work. But I'm here to hear what you have to say about it. Can you hear me?
Not a bad. I can hear you.
Okay.
I didn't know if I was supposed to put it in the chat or if I was supposed to say it out loud.
Oh no, speak. We're here. We want to hear you.
So I would say probably family. I mean, I grew up in the average white family, mother, father, last of 6 children. So family modeled it, and faith, or being in church.
Yeah.
So,
and did the model serve you or not? Like, tell us what you experienced. There was a loss, the most obvious loss, but there are other types of losses. Loss of job, loss of peace of mind, loss of mental stability. Like people like literally through mental illness, loss of physical functioning due to sickness of a loved one, or sickness for yourself, or both. So who modeled
right.
loss, and just name what type of loss we're talking about for you.
I'm lucky that in my life loss has not been a high focus, but I think I miscarried. I think miscarriage is a big loss that women are not allowed to really talk about, and my faith community supported me in that, and just letting me speak, the ability to just talk it.
And was it immediately after the loss, or did it come later?
Well, if you've ever been in that situation, sometimes in loss, you don't even know where you are. And, you get so down in the hole of depression, you don't even know you're there. And and nobody called it that when I was there.
Yeah.
But they just kept holding me up and letting me speak, letting me talk. And acknowledging acknowledging is important.
Awesome. And so because of how spirit works, and that's the language that I use for my walk and my journey in this life, you're in a perfect space. I am a reproductive health activist and advocate. Before you landed in the space, I talked about the loss of my daughter Shamani last year in October. She died due to maternal mortality. She died as a result of doing the most natural thing a woman can do, which is to give birth to a baby. She passed 2 weeks after giving birth to my second grandchild, Kari, and she died as a result of a pulmonary embolism. And that's big words for blood clot her lungs and then stopped her heart. And I also do a lot of work with people who've had miscarriages, infertility issues around, preterm labor, anything that's low vibrational around reproductive health. That's what I deal with, and I provide spaces for women and men and family members to talk about those losses. What I share with people around loss, because we focus on death a lot, and I'm talking about death, but I'm not talking about the literal physical form only. I'm talking about death of the possibility of something. So you were pregnant, and what I talk to women and men about that have a loss regarding a pregnancy is that you create a whole world for that baby. When the baby gets, and depending on how far along you are in the pregnancy, you start preparing, you're painting the room and buying things and thinking about life with this baby. And if you know the sex, this is what you're going to do with your little boy or little girl. I had a womb name for my son. We called him Sekou in the womb. And then when he came out, we called him Najaya Sekou. That's his first name. But it started in the womb, in the vision for his birth. And so when our community doesn't allow us to grieve those losses, they're like, well, the baby wasn't born and you can have another. When folks say these things, they don't understand that they're dismissing the world of it that you've created and your extended family members in preparation for the new life that's coming. And I want to say not for everybody, that some people, they get pregnant, they're not happy, so I don't want to put everybody in the same bag, but for you, it was a grieving process. So how far along in your pregnancy were you when you experienced your loss, Kim?
My 4th month.
4th month. So you entered into the second trimester, the second phase, and you were preparing yourself. So what was it you were creating in your mind and in your heart and in your spirit about this baby coming?
Well, the baby coming was a surprise. I've already had a 10, a 12, and a 14-year-old at home. So it was one of those, surprise. God likes to surprise you sometimes. And I look at it now, hindsight is an amazing 2020 thing. And I look at it now that God taught me a lot with that.
Yes.
Preparing my children for a new child, preparing my life for a new child. I was in school. I had gone back to college.
What were you studying?
Becoming a teacher, and I'm a teacher now. So, and one of the reasons why I'm here on this event today, this Juneteenth event today, is because I know as an educator, I need to educate myself so I could support. I live here in the New Haven area, and we have a very, very mixed population here. New Haven is a mini America. Our population numbers mimic what the United States has. It's kind of an interesting thing, and I need to be able to understand how to support all the children I serve, because I serve them all. So, and I know that in our community, this is very big, as we see across the nation, and not that my loss is insignificant, but it's very different from the losses that I know communities that I serve are. So I'm hoping to be able to listen in and maybe walk away with that one thing that I might say or not say that would make a difference for somebody else.
Ashe. And so you being here, you can have both. You can get the learning and the education and also get a deeper level of healing if you so choose it. But I thank you for sharing. And one of the things that you said that stood out for me is that you prepared your children for the coming of this new baby, this new life, this sibling. And we don't always know how to talk with children about loss. It's like, how do you explain that the baby that was in mommy's belly is no longer there, and that you released or miscarried, and now you're mourning? And then I don't know how you showed up with the family after you experienced the loss. And then you're in school, negotiating life and all of these different aspects of it. That's very difficult to keep going after you've experienced a loss. And it's not just a mind thing where someone outside of you. You had life in your belly and then it was released. That's a different loss. And so when folks don't get it, we get compounded levels of pummeling around the loss. It's like, you don't know what I'm talking about. You're saying things that are off kilter. You're dismissive. You're too scared to say things because a lot of times people are afraid.
Yes.
Loss. They don't know what to say. And then the typical, not trying to get on anybody in Facebook or in Zoom in this space right now, but people say the perfunctory thing. Oh, so sorry for your loss. You have my condolences, which doesn't align with your specific loss. But because we're not taught and conditioned about how to negotiate loss, we weird out on people, and we either ghost on them and disappear, or we're like, we say stuff and it comes out all awkward, or we,
yes, it is. It's an awkward time in
Yeah.
any of those forms, and so that's why I think this conversation is a great conversation to have, because we need to educate ourselves to know how to be there for each other, to show up for each other.
Right. And so this conversation is about leaning in, right? So getting close to it, allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable so you can move to the other side and move through it and come from the light, from the darkness into the light. So I thank you for being willing to unpack your loss. I honor what your body was able to do in both ways, like holding life and then releasing life and then allowing you to find life again and continue to study and be a teacher so that you can contribute to our students. And also, I acknowledge you for being willing to lean into the loss of what you think is true about what's needed for students, so you can embrace what actually is necessary for the students that you serve, because that takes something to lean into the loss of that, like to find another paradigm or structures to use so that you can be a more impactful and transformative teacher, educator in the field. So thank you for being here, because you could have been like, no, I'm not going to come in this space. This space is for Black and brown people, but here you are. So I acknowledge you for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's go to the next phase. We already entered it by talking with Kim, and then with Coach Cheryl put in the chat. So Nzinga, can you read what's on either Facebook if you see something that's a full share, or what Coach Cheryl put into the chat so I can bring her into the conversation too?
Yeah, so Coach Cheryl expanded on her experience with loss, and she says, I recall sitting on the front row in the funeral service as all the women of my family grieved hard. They bawled their eyes out, and I cried too. Later on, my dad explained more details around the murder to us. It was a very sad time.
Ashe. And the type of loss can determine how we grieve the loss. So for me, having a daughter who I was sitting with, eating with, it was me, my aunt, my goddaughter, my daughter's children, the newborn baby, she was breastfeeding, her mate who was taking care of her because she had a C-section. And then it switched from laughter and us joking around to her being in distress. And so the shock of that on the mind, body, spirit. And then also as a mom, watching my daughter breathe her last breaths and transitioning, shock to the system, traumatic. And then thinking about Coach Cheryl and what she just shared, having someone murdered, taken away from you through means that were just like a shock to the system. And then thinking about the death in itself, like they're not here anymore. And then thinking about the circumstances surrounding the death that compounds the grief and makes it complicated sometimes. So I wanted to ask if Coach Cheryl, if you could share about that. And we have Crystal in the space. Welcome, Crystal. If you can show yourself on the screen, that would be great. If not, it's okay. I just wanted to invite you to let you know that you are welcome to show yourself with that beautiful red flower in your hair. I love the image that you are projecting on Zoom. Facebook, as you can't see it, but it's definitely dope what she has, the flower that she has in her hair. So Cheryl, you want to share? You ready to share?
Sure. Yeah, I know. So, what did you want me to share? Because
just the experience of being a witness. You said you were young. So how did that land on you? We're talking about models for grief, and whether that actually amplified your ability to negotiate grief, or if it scared the shit out of you and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I don't want to be here. Like, what happened for you?
It sensitized me to people's feelings, and my own feelings about the loss, and just that, I guess I could say it allowed me the ability to lean into it and to just feel, and to just let whatever was being felt in my body as well as my mind and my heart, because some of them were actually going up to the casket and falling out, and it was just, it was just very intense. And it just to me let me know that when you love someone and you lose someone, you have to just express what you feel, not only for yourself, but also as an honor to that person, you know,
Mm.
as an honor to, as a testament to what you're missing. So it allowed me to be able to, every time that I, as an adult, every time that I experienced a loss, like when I lost my dad, the first thing I did was fall on the floor. I was at work and and I fall on the floor screaming, and I had to collect myself and then go, you know, someone put me in the cab to go where I needed to go. And the same with my brother. So it, I guess I would say that seeing that, being on that front row and witnessing that at such a young age opened me up to let me know the importance of just really expressing what you're feeling and not holding anything back. And I think that for me, it's the healthiest expression.
Ashe. Thank you. It's actually a rite of passage. As I said in the summary about this session, like our experiences of loss and grief are rites of passage. They move us from one stage and phase of our beingness to another. And it's inevitable that we will experience loss. We start to die as soon as we are born. As soon as we are born, we start to die. You know, our organs start to grow old day one, all of it. And it's a process, and it's a slow process, but it's inevitable. But we're not taught to embrace it, not in this society. We're taught to try to reverse aging and to fight death at any cost. And I understand we want to live, we want to be, we want to experience, but it's inevitable. We're not going to live forever. And so thinking about us as a culture, leaning in, talking about it, teaching about it in school as a part of the process. When your animals die, like for some, that's their first experience with death. Not like pretending like, oh, he's at school or she's at school. Let's just take the dog out or the cat or the bird and act like nothing ever happened. You know, going through a process of mourning with the child and speaking about the loss and naming it for what it is and not calling it something else and not causing confusion. My grandchildren, when my daughter passed, were 2 and newborn. And so the 2-year-old needed to be spoken with about it in a very specific way. And her dad just said earlier this morning that she recently was talking to neighbors and she asked one of the neighbors who the person was that was with them. And they're like, oh, it was a man. It was like, oh, that's my mom. And she was like, I don't have a mom. And then her dad got the indicator that it was time to have conversation. She was like, oh, my mom's on the wall because her father's an artist and paints pictures of her mom and it's all over the house. But she was like, I don't have a mom. She's on the wall. She's, you know, on the different walls, but she's not here. And so it's time, she's 3 now, to have a conversation about death and transition and loss and to bring that energy to the forefront so she can understand and understand what happened with her mommy and that her mom is covering us because that's our spiritual belief and she walks with us, but to avoid the conversation or to think she's too young is an error. And so we need to continue to unpack that with her as she grows in ages and stages and phases. So Crystal, thank you for coming through and showing your face. We appreciate you. So I wanted to ask Nzinga if you could read Paige's share. And thank you, Coach Cheryl, for your share about the losses in your family. I had the benefit of being able to be at the ritual of mourning for your brother. And it was such a beautiful experience hearing everyone talk about him and to be in the space of the grief of the family. Thank you.
Thank you for being there.
Yes. Nzinga,
Thank you.
what do we have from Facebook?
Yep. So from Facebook, we have Paige, who writes, she is Paige Ryan Schaefer, 30. My mother, Karen Schaefer, modeled processing loss, grieving. She dealt with it head on, prioritized herself and her children when she experienced loss. She lost friends, family, jobs in order to make a good life and good experiences for her children. She spoke about it, acknowledged it. When she lost her father in 2000, she prioritized herself and her healing. She reached out for help. In 2016, she began having chronic pain in her arm, and it affected her everyday life. I watched her deal with the loss of living a pain-free, normal life. She has researched and went to countless appointments and tried lots of options to help her. Her modeling taught me to deal with things and not to let them fester internally or mentally, and also to make my priorities clear.
That Paige, you don't need this session. You need to be teaching this session. Absolutely. And your mom too, co-facilitating. I thank you for that share. So we definitely want to talk about and unpack like models for processing grief of all kinds, because once again, we only taught about death as grief, but grief comes in many, many forms. I've grieved relationship loss, not because I wanted to stay with the person, but the idea of having a relationship that lasts and just mourning that, not the person, but the circumstance, and being in pain over that. Just the reality of it and being able to move through that. And where I feel most of my mourning is in my belly. And right now, like since we've been talking for the last 15 minutes, I feel a deep, deep ache in my belly. And I'm wondering who in the space, either on Facebook Live or in the Zoom space, is holding space in their belly right now, because I'm feeling it just as an impact. And that's how I do my work, like feeling into the community. Somebody's belly is on fire right now and it's transferring over into me. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that in the space. Maybe somebody on the Facebook thread will acknowledge themselves, or someone in the Zoom space right now. It's just like, it's just churning. So I wanted to say something about grief and mourning and the difference. Grief is the experience of the loss. Like, the loss hits you, and then you're experiencing the emotions and the energy of the grief. Mourning is the action. Mourning is the concrete manifestation of the grief in the form of a service or a ritual, or, talking about it. Like your process of mourning is you moving the grief from this space to the next space. It could be a lifelong thing, like you're grieving something like the loss of a parent, or me of my child. I don't know how I'm going to be 10 years from now in reference to Shamani. I hear other parents who experiences losses like that saying, it never goes away. I don't expect it to. Shamani will always be with me, but I don't know where I'm going to be. So I'll let y'all know if we come back here for what's this Juneteenth, the 11th, for the 21st Juneteenth, I'll let you know where I'm at. It's an action-oriented thing to mourn, and it's an expression of your grief. So I'm curious about those in this space who know that you've lost something and you haven't mourned it adequately. I always joke and say that I see dead people. I do healing work with folks. I'm a licensed clinician. I've been in the field for 29 years. And I've seen dead people in spaces where I've just been doing one-on-one with folks because they haven't processed the loss of something or somebody. There's dead energy in the space, and it's bogging them down. And so that those ghosts are still present in their lives, and it drives what they do and what they don't do. So mechanisms for mourning, mechanism for grieving, can either help you in your evolution, or you not taking it on can also cause you to devolve. I don't know if de-evolution is a word, but I'm going to make it up in this space. So either evolve because you're doing the work and processing, or you devolve because you're not doing the work and processing, and it's stuck in your body, and it can cause dis-ease in the body. So what I loved about Paige's share is that her mom, as stuff was coming up, she talked about it. But I want to invite you, Paige, to consider that sometimes the heavy lifting can cause dis-ease in the body. So when you spoke about your mother's arm and her pain, what I thought about as a metaphysician is like, was she doing a lot of heavy lifting? Not literally, but figuratively, spiritually, emotionally for people, because she would talk about it. And I don't want us to get this twisted. Sometimes we talk about stuff, but we're not processing the emotional content. I'm a living witness a living example of that. And E.R. Robin is here in this space, and she would talk to me about this. I would speak about my experiences of molestation. And as a person that was molested, I lost my innocence, I lost my sense of safety, and I never grieved that until I got grown. The losses of safety, that a family friend violated me. So I couldn't trust my family because I told people and they didn't do anything about it. I couldn't trust the person who was a friend, and I didn't feel like certain people were friendly because I felt like, wow, if a family friend could come into my house and do this, what else might people do? I can't trust. And so I never got an opportunity to fully grieve any of that because the family was like, shut it up, don't say anything about it, that didn't happen. So my grief around what happened to me in my physical body, in my physical beingness, my sexual beingness, my sensual beingness got violated and thwarted, and not thwarted, but stunted and stifled. And I never got a chance to fully grieve that. But I talked about it, so people thought I was grieving. And I don't want us to get that twisted. Once again, you can talk about some of the levels of loss and devastation that you've experienced, but not process it and grieve it. So I would go through the motions, telling the story, but I didn't process the emotional content, the anger, the resentment, the fear, the devastation, the disappointment, the sorrow, the shame, the guilt, I was a little girl carrying guilt, like, what's wrong with me that this person did this to me? Never processed it until I got grown. And so people would hear me talk about it and they were like, oh my gosh, she's so courageous, she's so brave. But the emotions were on the shelf until E.R. Robin and others in my life were like, nah, you don't emote. You don't do that. You hold back. And so I had to get present to that and start unpacking the pain and the emotion. And once I did that, the floodgates open. And what I will say to E.R. Robin, who's in this space right now, who's coming up next to facilitate, that opening, me being willing to do that, prepared me for the loss of my daughter, prepared me to grieve adequately, to cry, to name my emotions, to know that I needed to go back to therapy to process it. And I will also say simultaneously, because both can exist in the same space, that I held space for an entire community, thousands of people, because of how I was being around the loss of my daughter. I said to the community, what does her death have to do with my purpose? I have no right to stop living my purpose because my daughter died. And I also said to people that she died one day, but she lived thousands of days. So who am I to let the death of that day that she died on October 6th stop and block me from honoring the thousands of days that she lived? And so that's my stand around loss. And that's me leaning in to loss as a conduit for light and life. So I know E.R. Robin is here. I don't know if you want to say something about that. We both lost her because she was her bonus daughter and we grieved together, but we also stand in our purpose unapologetically. So you want to say something about that, E.R. Robin?
Yes, I do. And I just want to first acknowledge you because I do acknowledge the shift in you being able to emote and taking the feedback. But yes, Shamani was my bonus daughter as well. And, as we grieved together, Shawnee allowed herself to be supported, which was something new. I mean, you always being a support for other people, sis. So what was so great about it for me was to be able to offer to you what you offer to me and so many other people by your own allowance to do it. Like you get to grieve too. Shamani meant so much to us, and her transition, I see the impact on her life, not just in my life, but in yours, just from her transition and the way it impacts Omari and Anari and Kari and Jasmine too. She is light. She is light. And she has been light to all of us while we were in darkness. So yeah.
Yeah. And I say, thank you, yeah. I say that Shamani is doing more for me in her death than she could have been able to do in her life. She's brought me opportunities, new people in my life. I'm doing a series. She dropped that in. Like I'm watching a TV and she's like, look, pay attention. I'm like, oh, I'm like getting so emotional because I'm so joyful that I still have my daughter because of what I believe and what I practice, because I lean into loss as a conduit for my growth and development. So I thank you all for being here holding space, because if it wasn't for Shamani, I might not be here in this space right now, delivering this message and definitely in this form. I have a relationship with loss over the last several months. I'm like, universe, what the hell? I'm saying what the hell, but y'all really know what I want to say. I'm like, what is going on? My daughter dies in October. My grandmother who raised me died in February. I'm just like the COVID-19 crisis comes, and my life has never been more busy and amplified and lit the hell up. So when we lean into loss as a conduit, as a rite of passage, we discover things about who we are that we never would have discovered if the loss didn't occur. So lost opportunities, lost relationships. Sometimes the best thing that ever happened to us is releasing that stifling, tired ass, low vibrational relationship, intimate partnership with someone, whether it's women loving on women, men loving on men, men loving on women, whatever it is. Sometimes the relationship has run its course and we hold on, or we say the kids, we say, because of our spiritual beliefs, but the relationship is not serving us spiritually. And the kids see it unraveling and looking messy, and we stay there anyway. And we have toxicity all around us and the people that care about us. And we're holding on so much that we end up losing grip on ourselves. So I invite you to consider that sometimes things need to be killed off so that life and light can be experienced and can emerge and be resurfaced or reignited again. So Crystal, I see you nodding your head. What do you hear me saying? So unmute yourself. I would love to hear from you as we prepare to close out and hear from E.R. Robin, because she's next after me. Can you unmute? Oh, there you go.
Yes.
Mhm.
What you were saying, which is so beautiful. I think what was key, because that's been resonating in my spirit lately, is cutting off dead weight, cutting off parasites, cutting off leeches to your life that you've been holding on, whether it be hurt or it just be unfruitful relationships. So I totally agree with that statement.
Okay. And I don't want you to put yourself on the spot. I mean, you're in Zoom space, but you're on Facebook Live. I don't care. My mantra for living is I expose myself to expand myself. So that's how I'm living. But I'm not asking you to live like that. You can maybe speak from the past, but maybe a situation where you were holding on and you recognize that, wow, this is dead weight. I need to cut this off. Maybe you were forced into it, because if you're like me, I have to be kicked over a cliff sometimes in order for me to spread my wings and fly. So what's a situation that you can speak to that you're like holding on and you finally let it go and then something opened up that you never would have dreamed?
I can definitely speak to that in friendships. I used to be, as a younger girl, very easily to cut off a friend. Like, if you just treat me badly or I just felt like it wasn't going to go, I would cut you off. And so I started to heal in that particular area. And as I went into my 20s, I was like, I'm not going to cut people off so quickly. Even if they show me they can't be faithful or they can't be loving or supportive, I'm not going to cut them off. And I found myself dragging unfruitful, like destructive relationships year after year after year into my life and through time. And what I found was, as soon as I cut them off, I call it God, you call it universe or whatever, I believe that God started placing real friendships into my life. And now I have thriving relationships. I have beautiful, love-centered, cultured relationships now, all because I cut off one or two people that were just killing me at a faster rate than I am dying already.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a beautiful thing. Sometimes the relationship is maintained though, or sustained, and you kill off aspects of it. You cut away, you know how a flower or a bush, if you cut away the dead spots, then all of a sudden it starts to bloom. So it's not always to cut off people or release the relationships. Cut off, I'm like, that's kind of harsh, right? Releasing the relationships, I try to release in love. I don't always do it well. I try not to ghost on people and, you know, be brave enough to have the courageous conversations with them before I like just, you know, kill off possibility. But sometimes having that brave space to have a conversation with people opens up a doorway for new light and life in the relationship. And sometimes it's not possible, but the invitation is also to release in love. It's not possible. This is not working. I thank you for the lessons that you have taught and brought into my life. But one of the principal lessons that I've learned is that this doesn't work for me. And so I release you with love. And some people fight for it and they are angry. But if you know in your heart love is there, then you can release it and feel at peace around it. So I thank you for your share, Crystal. And I thank you for joining us in the Zoom space so that we can chop it up and have a live conversation. Thank you so much. So I have a few more minutes. I want to make sure that I transition and hand over to Robin in a really powerful way. And Zinka, I wanted to hear from you because I know you posted some statements from Facebook. I just wanted to bring them in if there were things that people said that they want me to unpack in the minutes that we have.
I did. So Shaquana from Facebook writes, I would have to say the model I have for grief is just to be strong. Not sure if that is right or wrong as I get older. You can cry a little, but you have to be strong for your family. I think maybe I should be able to share more, but I have been raised to have strength. I do hold a lot of things in.
Got it.
And
thank you for the powerful share. And you're not the only one, Shaquana. And this is Juneteenth, so I unapologetically talk about being a Black woman, an African-American woman. And just thinking about historically, how we were forced to work from sunup to sundown. We were forced to have babies when we didn't want to have babies. We were forced to be in intimate connection, having sex to generate those babies or having sex for someone else's pleasure. We were forced to work in the kitchens. We were forced to just be somebody else's property and puppet to do their will and to have it their way. And so being released from that, so-called released from that, If you know anything about trauma, you carry that away. And if it's not addressed, what happened to us, what happened to them, it gets carried over. And so that strength trope, strong Black woman trope, yes, we're strong. We've been through a lot of shit, but we're going to go through even more if we keep operating from a space of we can be pummeled and hit again emotionally and spiritually and physically over and over again, and keep taking stuff and taking mess and taking toxicity in, and then not speak about it. Keep moving and working another day, working 3 jobs and trying to hold down the kids or hold up the kids. That is not a formula for life and living. That's a formula for death and destruction. And you can be alive and be a walking dead person inside of this body that's still moving and breathing. So I invite anybody that has the fallacy of be strong no matter what, in your psyche, in your mindset, in your body, that I invite you to unpack that and release that. My biggest strength, what I will say, is people were like, oh, you're so strong, because I stood before the community, all of these people, when my daughter passed, at the wake service, at the actual homegoing service, and at the repast. The reason my strength came in was because I had said all that I needed to say to my daughter while she was alive. I could stand before the community because, like I said, she lived thousands of days. She traveled. She loved on her children. She brought 2 lives into the world. She had a great partner. All of those things, I'm like, I can stand strong because of that. But if we didn't have that, Lord knows, I would have been there rolling on the floor, possibly pulling her out of the coffin. But I was at peace with my relationship with my daughter. We laughed hard, we played hard, we spirited hard. She read for me, I read for her. We performed together, we traveled different places together. She checked me, I checked her. I cursed her out, she cursed me out. Every aspect of a relationship you could have. She came for me for wise counsel for her relationship. I loved that girl and she loved me. So falling all over the place when I had that juicy relationship didn't make no damn sense to me. So I'll leave you with that. Lean into loss. Lean into loss and darkness as the conduit for your light work and your light edifications and manifestations. And as Robin prepares her message, which is you are the light you seek in the world, it's only transition from this energy to an energy of light. And this conversation was about light inside of death discussion. So I thank you for the time that you spent. I thank you for your generosity, Facebook, and then also those who are on Zoom. I asked Crystal and Kim if you are able to stay to remain with Robin while she unpacks her conversation. Robin, thank you for your holding space too in preparation for your own session. And I love you. I love you all. Have a blessed one.
All right, Coach Shawnee, thank you so much for all you've shared, for guiding us and allowing us to have moments to process and tools to process moving through loss and grieving. I know this is something that I struggle with, and the community needs it. And so thank you for holding space for that.
My pleasure. Blessings to you. I'm going to listen now.